Before we start, if you enjoy the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. The spatial rift tore reality apart 3 seconds before Ash Donovan could pull them out. His hands moved across the controls, fingers dancing between manual overrides while his salvage runner Nomad bucked and screamed. The derelict predecessor warship had appeared on sensors as cold and dead, a perfect target floating in the throat, that treacherous stretch of space where abandoned vessels came to drift. Now its gravity well was dragging them in like a hungry mouth. "Pull up," Sarah said from the navigator's station, her voice level despite the ship spinning into free fall. Those blue cat-like ears lay flat against her skull. "You're overcompensating." "I'm keeping us alive," Ash said. He cut the main thrusters and fired only the port stabilizers, letting the spin work for them instead of against them. The throat didn't forgive pilots who thought physics. The viewport filled with the derelict's massive hangar bay, growing larger with terrifying speed. Ash watched the distance countdown, waited until his instinct screamed, then fired every brake thruster at once. The Nomad hit the deck hard enough to crack the landing struts. Sparks showered across ancient metal. They skidded sideways, plowing through debris until the ship finally shuddered to a stop against a support column. Silence crashed down around them. Emergency lighting cast everything in amber. Saris unbuckled and stood in one fluid motion. Her pink skin seemed to glow in the dim light, blue hair spilling over her shoulders as she turned to face him. She was tall for her species, almost matching his height, and right now every line of her body radiated controlled fury. "Your reckless approach created the instability," she said. Ash pulled off his restraints and stood, feeling the ache in his shoulders from fighting the controls. "My reckless approach kept us from being crushed when that rift opened. You wanted to approach from the ventral side, remember? We'd have been paced." Her ears twitched forward, then flattened again. In the 6 months since she joined his crew, assigned by the Vulkar Consortium as a mandatory observer on human salvage operations, he'd learned to read those tells. Right now she wanted to argue, but couldn't quite find the logical flaw in his statement. She turned instead to the console and began running diagnostics. Her fingers moved with mechanical precision across the haptic interface. "Main drive is offline, port thrusters destroyed, communications array damaged, life support holding at 70% capacity." "How long?" 48 hours before carbon dioxide buildup becomes critical. Less if we exert ourselves." Ash moved to the viewport and looked out at the hangar. It stretched away into darkness, easily large enough to hold 100 ships their size. The architecture was wrong, angles that seemed to shift when he looked at them directly, metals that held a faint luminescence even after centuries of abandonment. Predecessor technology. The species that had vanished 3,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins that still outpaced anything the current galactic community could build. "Distress beacon?" he asked. Saris worked in silence for a moment, her ears swiveling forward in concentration. "It's transmitting, but something is interfering. The signal is being absorbed by the ship's hull. Nothing is getting out." Ash felt the weight of that settle in his chest. They were alone on a dead ship in a region of space most people avoided. The next salvage crew might not come through for weeks. "Then we fix our ship or find a way to boost the signal," he said. "This hangar has to have power conduits, maybe even a functional transmitter if we're lucky. We should conduct a systematic survey first. Gather data before our air runs out." Ash grabbed his tool belt from the locker and strapped it on. "We don't have time for systematic. We need to move fast and adapt." Saris's jaw tightened. The Valkyrie had spent generations engineering themselves into perfect logical beings, removing what they called the chaos of desire from their genetics. Everything about her, from the way she moved to the way she thought, was meant to be controlled, measured, superior to messy human emotion, which made it deeply satisfying when her ears betrayed her irritation. "Your species' tendency toward impulsive action is why you require overseers," she said. "And your species' tendency toward overthinking is why you need us to actually get things done." He opened the airlock. The atmosphere sensors flickered green, breathable somehow, after all these centuries. The air that rushed in tasted metallic and old, but it was air. Ash stepped out onto the hangar deck. The metal rang hollow under his boots. Around them, strange equipment lay scattered like the bones of giants. He could see what might have been loading mechs, or weapons platforms, or something his mind couldn't quite categorize. Saris followed, her hand resting on the plasma pistol at her hip. Her ears swiveled constantly, tracking sounds he couldn't hear. "This ship is Predator class," she said quietly. "Military configuration based on the hull structure. We should not be here." Little late for should. Ash pulled out his scanner and swept the area. "I'm picking up power signatures. Faint, but they're running through the bulkheads. Something in the ship still has juice." They moved deeper into the hangar, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Ash kept his senses open, that old military training rising up. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but present. Like they were being watched. A doorway loomed ahead, twice human height, and sealed with symbols that seemed to rive in his peripheral vision. Saris approached it, running her fingers across the surface. "The language predates modern translation matrices," she said. "But I believe this indicates crew access." The door shuddered. Both of them jumped back, hands on weapons. Slowly, grinding like the voice of mountains, the door split open. Lights flickered beyond it, a corridor stretching into the ship's depths. As they watched, more lights began activating in sequence, spreading away into the distance like a chain reaction. "That's not possible," Saris whispered. "This ship has been dead for millennia." Ash's heart pounded against his ribs. Behind them, a massive grinding sound echoed through the hangar. He spun around in time to see the bay doors, the ones they'd crashed through, sealing shut. Metal plates slid into place with thunderous finality. The ship was closing around them. The lights continued spreading, more systems awakening. Somewhere deep in the hull, machinery hummed to life with a sound like breathing. Saris's ears flattened completely against her skull, her pink skin pale in the growing light. "We need to leave now." But Ash was already looking at the sealed hangar doors, doing the math. They had no ship, no way to cut through predecessor metal, and something ancient and powerful was waking up around them. "Too late for that," he said. "We're trapped. The only way is forward." The corridor stretched ahead like a throat, and Ash felt like they were being swallowed. More lights awakened as they moved deeper, panels glowing to life in sequence as if the ship anticipated their path. The walls curved in ways that defied conventional architecture, creating spaces that seemed larger on the inside than the outside. Saris kept close, her breathing controlled but her ears constantly moving, tracking every sound. "The air is getting warmer," she said. "Environmental systems are reactivating. At least we won't freeze." Ash swept his scanner across another junction, powers flowing toward the center of the ship. Whatever woke up, it's concentrating there. "Then we should move away from it." "And go where?" "The hangar's sealed. We need to find either an auxiliary bay or a communications array strong enough to punch through the damming." He glanced at her. "Both of those are going to be deeper in." Her fingers drummed against her thigh, a nervous tell she probably didn't realize she had. A grinding sound echoed from somewhere behind them. They both turned, weapons drawn. "The ship is reconfiguring," Saris said. "Sealing sections, redirecting our path, hurting us." Ash lowered his pistol but didn't holster it. "Something wants us to go somewhere specific." The corridor opened into a larger chamber, dominated by a central platform surrounded by dormant terminals. The walls were covered in star maps, thousands of them, layering over each other in impossible depth. "This is a navigation center," Sarah said, moving toward the nearest terminal. "The predecessors mapped regions of space we haven't even explored." A high-pitched whine split the air. Ash's combat instincts fired, and he tackled Sarah sideways as a beam of scarlet energy sliced through the space where she'd been standing. They hit the deck hard, his body covering hers. From alcoves in the walls, 3 automated sentries emerged. They were insectoid in design, 4-legged, with mounted energy weapons that swiveled to track movement. Ancient technology, but very much functional. Ash rolled, dragging Saris with him as another beam scorched the floor. He came up firing, his plasma pistol cracking against the nearest sentry's carapace. The shot ricocheted harmlessly off its shielding. "Shields!" he shouted. "Find cover!" Saris was already moving, her long legs carrying her to a fallen console. She rose and fired 3 precise shots at the second sentry sensor cluster. The machine staggered but didn't fall. Ash's mind raced. The sentries were positioning themselves to create a crossfire, moving with coordinated precision. Fighting them head-on would get them killed. He grabbed a piece of debris and threw it high across the room. 2 sentries tracked it, their weapons following the movement. In that split second, Ash fired at the floor beneath the third sentry, hitting the damaged section. The metal gave way and the machine crashed through, its legs scrambling for purchase. "They track movement," he called to Saris. "Use it." She understood immediately. While he created distractions with thrown debris, she moved between cover points, each movement drawing fire that he exploited. They fell into a rhythm, his chaos and her precision weaving together. When one sentry overextended to target him, Saris put 3 shots through the gap in its armor plating. It collapsed in the shower of sparks. The remaining 2 adapted, learning. They stopped falling for the same tricks. Ash noticed a damaged power conduit running along the ceiling, exposed where ancient plating had fallen away. He pointed. Saris followed his gaze and her ears perked forward in understanding. She laid down, covering fire, while Ash climbed onto a tilted platform. The sentries focused on her, their weapons tracking. Ash aimed carefully and fired, splitting the conduit. Electricity arced across the room in brilliant blue streams. Both sentries seized as the current overloaded their systems, then collapsed into smoking ruin. Silence fell, broken only by their breathing. "Your tactics are dangerously imprecise," Sari said, but her voice carried something that wasn't quite criticism. They worked. Ash climbed down, favoring his left side where he'd hit the deck hard. "You all right?" Undamaged. She holstered her weapon, then looked at him more carefully. "You're injured, just bruised," but when he moved, pain flared across his ribs. They found crew quarters 2 chambers later. The space was smaller, more comprehensible. Bunks lined the walls, and though everything was coated in dust, it appeared intact. Ash lowered himself onto one of the bunks, feeling exhaustion settle in. His side throbbed with each breath. He pulled off his jacket and started on his shirt, peeling the fabric away from scraped skin along his ribs. The bruising was already darkening, spreading across his side like spilled ink. Saris had turned to examine the room's terminal. She glanced back and stopped completely. Her ears went perfectly still, focused entirely on him. Her eyes tracked across his chest, his shoulders, the scars from a dozen close calls written on his skin. For 3 heartbeats she just stared, something shifting in her expression that he couldn't name. Then her ears flicked back and she looked away quickly, pink skin flushing darker. "I will stand watch while you treat yourself," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I thought you said you'd help. You appear capable of managing alone." But she didn't move toward a door. Instead, she stood with her back to him, spine rigid. Her ears kept swiveling toward him and then forcing themselves forward again, a battle playing out in those small movements. Ash watched her, something warm stirring in his chest. He'd seen her face down combat drones without flinching, but right now she looked like she was fighting a war with herself. "Saris, I should check the perimeter. Saris, look at me." She turned slowly, and when their eyes met, he saw something he'd never seen in her before. Uncertainty, want, quickly buried but not quite fast enough. "Your people engineered away desire," he said quietly. "But you're standing there like you've never seen a shirtless man before." "I have seen many humans. In medical contexts, this is different." The words came out clipped. "You were my crewmate. I should not—" She trailed off, her hands clenching at her sides. Ash stood carefully, ignoring the pain. He didn't approach her, just stood there, giving her space to being shoes. Should not what? Find myself distracted by primitive biological responses? But her ears betrayed her, tilting toward him. The Vulkari moved beyond such weakness generations ago. Doesn't look like weakness from where I'm standing. I am not, she started, but the protest died. Her shoulders sagged slightly. We should rest. The terminal contains data we need to review. She moved to the console with deliberate focus. Ash smiled, despite everything, and began wrapping his ribs with compression bandages from a wall-mounted medical kit. Minutes later, they sat together at the terminal while Saris worked through the ancient language matrices. Symbols began resolving into meaning. This ship is called the Ascendant, she said. A warship and research vessel. The predecessors were studying evolutionary adaptation, trying to determine what allows species to survive catastrophic change. Why? Because they were dying. Their species became so specialized, so rigidly structured, they could not adapt when their environment shifted. By the time they recognized the problem, it was too late. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. The ship has an artificial intelligence, Saris continued, still active. It has been running trials for 3,000 years, waiting for worthy subjects. That's what the sentries were. It's testing us. Text scrolled across the screen. Not in the predecessor language, but in standard galactic common. Trial initiated. Prove adaptability. Prove worth. Only those who transcend limitations may claim inheritance. The ship shuddered around them, and somewhere in the distance, massive machinery began to wake. The Ascendant came alive around them like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. Ash and Saris moved through corridors that reconfigured themselves, walls sliding aside to reveal new passages. The ship was guiding them, and resisting felt pointless. Every alternate route they attempted sealed before they could take it. We're being manipulated, Saris said, her hand tight on her weapon. We're being tested. Ash checked his scanner. That AI wants to see if we can transcend our limitations. They entered a vast chamber that stole the breath from his lungs. The space was circular, easily 50 meters across, with a domed ceiling that displayed the star field outside. The floor was a massive arena divided into sections, force field mazes, suspended platforms over darkness, puzzle mechanisms built into the metal itself. In the center, a holographic interface flickered to life. Trial 2. Synthesis. Logic alone fails. Instinct alone fails. Prove integration. The hologram showed 2 paths through the chamber, one marked with geometric patterns, the other with the more simple ones. The more wisdom of the body is the wisdom of the more wisdom. A failure means termination. A timer appeared. 30 minutes. The geometric path, Sarah said. It's logical, systematic, and the organic one is pure intuition. Ash studied both roads. It wants us to pick our strengths and fail separately. Then what do you suggest? We do both. He pointed to where the paths intersected. Look, they cross. We switch. You take the logical sections, I take the instinctive ones. Sarah studied the layout, her fingers drumming against her thigh. It's risky. Then we're dead either way. But that AI keeps saying transcend limitations. It's looking for adaptation. She met his eyes, and something passed between them. Trust, maybe. 29 minutes, she said. They moved. The first section was Saris's domain, force field gates requiring sequential deactivation based on mathematical patterns. Her fingers flew across the ancient controls. The gates opened and they ran through. The next section was his, moving platforms over a pit, dropping into darkness. No pattern, just reaction. Ash didn't think, just moved, grabbing Saris's hand and pulling her with him, calling out when to jump, when to wait. She followed without question. They landed on the far side with seconds to spare. At the crossing point, they switched paths. Saris manipulated gravity fields with methodical precision, while Ash navigated a room that shifted by feel alone. Every few seconds, they called out to each other, warnings, encouragements, updates. Working separately but together. A force field puzzle appeared in Saris's path, requiring 2 people to solve simultaneously. I need, she started. On it, Ash sprinted across the boundary between paths. He reached her side and grabbed the second control panel. Tell me what to do. Match my pattern inversely. When I press 1, you press 6. They worked together, hands moving in perfect synchronization. The force field dissolved. They ran together now, the separate paths forgotten. A maze appeared next, shifting walls and false passages. Ceres started to analyze it, but Ash grabbed her hand. No time. Trust me. He pulled her into the maze, following his gut. Left, right, straight, left again. The walls shifted behind them. Ceres's hand tightened in his, but she followed. They burst out the other side with 8 minutes left. The final section stretched before them, a zero-gravity combat scenario. Automated drones emerged from alcoves, weapons charging. Ash and Ceres looked at each other and moved as one. In zero gravity, they became a dance. He pushed off walls, and she used him as an anchor point, spinning to fire at drones he maneuvered into position. When one came at his blind side, she grabbed his shoulder and pulled him aside, her other hand firing past his ear to destroy the threat. They moved through the space like they'd trained together for years. His unpredictability kept the drones off balance. Her precision eliminated them when exposed. Their bodies learned each other's rhythm. When he'd push off, she was already positioning to catch him. When she needed an angle, he was already creating it. The last drone fell with 90 seconds to spare. They drifted in the center of the chamber, still holding onto each other, breathing hard. The zero gravity pressed them close, and Ash became intensely aware of every point where their bodies touched. Ceres's eyes were wide, her ears tilting forward. We did it, she said softly. We did it together. The hologram appeared between them. Trial complete. Synthesis achieved. You adapt. You learn. You transcend individual limitation. Gravity returned gradually. They sank to the floor, still close enough to touch. This is what it wanted, Ceres said. To see if we could work together despite being fundamentally different. Or maybe because we're different. Ash studied her face, saw the flush coloring her cheeks, the way her ears tilted toward him. What you said before about not being distracted, I know what I said. And? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers touching the spot on her shoulder where he'd gripped her during the combat sequence. The Vulkari eliminated desire because our ancestors nearly destroyed themselves with it. Wars fought over passion, over jealousy, over love. We decided logic was safer. Is it? I thought so. Until I realized that everything I've been trained to suppress might be the very thing keeping me alive. Your instinct, your passion, it's not weakness. She met his eyes, and I find myself wanting to understand it, not academically. The air between them felt charged. Ash reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek, and she leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly. This is dangerous, she whispered. Everything we're doing is dangerous. The ship shuddered violently, cutting her off. Red emergency lighting flooded the chamber. The hologram appeared again, text scrolling rapidly. External contact detected. Unauthorized vessels approaching. Hostile intent confirmed. Ash pulled up his scanner and his stomach dropped. 12 ships. Military configuration. Closing fast. Someone tracked us, he said. Ceres pulled up the holographic display, accessing the Ascendant's sensors. Her face went pale. Vulkar Mercenary Group. Cade Vulkar's personal fleet. You know him? Everyone knows him. The most dangerous salvager in this sector. She looked at Ash. If he gets control of this ship, then we make sure he doesn't. Ash stood, offering her his hand. She took it without hesitation. Time to show this AI what we can really do when we work together. The Ascendant's bridge materialized around them as walls reconfigured. Holographic displays burst to life, showing Vulkar's fleet closing distance with predatory precision. Ash moved to the command console. Can you access the weapons? He asked. Ceres was already working at the navigation station. Weapons offline. Propulsion at 20%. Shields minimal. She looked up, ears flat. We can't fight them. And we can't run. The hologram flickered. Trial 3, sacrifice. The worthy understand when to destroy power rather than allow its corruption. Saris pulled up deeper system readouts, her eyes widening. This ship isn't just a warship. Her voice dropped. It's a terraforming vessel, built to reshape entire planets. Atmospheres, gravity, geology, everything. Ash felt ice settle in his stomach. Whoever controls the ship could hold entire systems hostage, Saris continued. That's why Vulkar is here. The tactical display updated. 3 mercenary ships accelerating toward docking points. 6 minutes until they board, Saris said. Choose. Claim the inheritance or deny it to all. Can we destroy it? Ash asked. There's a Scuttle protocol. Manual activation from engineering. 10 minutes from activation to detonation. Ash pulled up the ship's layout. They could reach engineering, start the overload, but getting out would require stealing one of the mercenary shuttles. We let them board, he said. Sarah stared at him. That's suicide. Not if we're smart. We make it look like we're trying to steal the ship. They'll focus on stopping us, not on why we're heading to engineering. And then, we steal one of their shuttles and run. Her hand came up and touched his chest, palm flat over his heart. Why do I keep following your insane plans? She asked softly. Because they work. Or because I'm losing my ability to think clearly around you. The tactical display flashed red. Mercenary ships were docking. They moved fast through corridors while Saris accessed terminals, creating false trails. They made it look like they were trying to restore weapons. The first mercenary team breached through a starboard airlock. Ash and Saris descended through maintenance shafts, avoiding the main routes. Ash's earpiece crackled with intercepted communications. Command, this is Alpha Team. Found evidence of tampering at the bridge. Copy that. Bravo and Charlie teams converge on engineering. That voice. Cade Vulkar himself. They reached engineering as the first team rounded the corner. Saris grabbed Ash and pulled him through the hatch, sealing it. Plasma fire scorched the door as they dove for cover. The engineering bay was massive, dominated by a central reactor column pulsing with contained energy. At the far end, a terminal glowed with amber light. Cutting torches began working on the sealed hatch. Ash and Cirrus sprinted to the terminal. Cirrus's fingers flew across it. Scuttle protocol initiated. Core overload in 10 minutes. Confirm authorization. Genetic scan, Ash said. The hatch behind them glowed red-hot. Saris placed her hand on the scanner. Nothing happened. Fear flashed across her face. It needs both of us. Ash put his hand beside hers. The scanner pulsed. Authorization confirmed. Detonation in 10 minutes. The hatch exploded inward. Mercenaries poured through. Ash and Saris dove behind the reactor column as plasma fire filled the air. You just killed us all! Vulkar's voice boomed. He stepped through the smoke, massive and heavy armor. Whatever you just did, undo it. Can't, Ash called back. Ship's going to blow. The ship shuddered. Warning klaxons wailed. The reactor's pulse accelerated, growing brighter. Vulkar's expression shifted. Fall back to the shuttles. Move. Ash grabbed Saris's hand. Time to go. They ran, following the mercenaries. The ship was coming apart, systems overloading. Explosions rocked the corridors. They reached the docking level. Ash spotted one shuttle with its boarding ramp still down. There. They sprinted. Behind them, a massive explosion tore through the corridor. The blast wave threw them forward. Ash forced himself up, dragging Saris with him. They dove through the shuttle's hatch as it began to lift. Ash slammed the emergency close. Through the V-port, they watched the Ascendant tear itself apart. Other shuttles were fleeing. Their shuttle's autopilot pulled them away. Saris overrode the autopilot and pointed them away from Vulkar's fleet. The Ascendant died in a flash of light. When it cleared, nothing remained but debris. Ash slumped into the co-pilot seat. Saris sat beside him, hands shaking as she set their course. We did it, she said quietly. She turned to look at him, and fear crashed over her face. Without thinking, Ash pulled her to him. She pressed against his chest, trembling, his arms wrapped around her. "I thought we were dead," she whispered. "So many times, but we weren't. We adapted. Together." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "Everything I was taught about controlling desire, suppressing emotion, it's all breaking apart. Because of you. Is that a bad thing?" "I don't know anything anymore except," she touched his face, "except that, when I thought I might die, the only thing I regretted was not doing this." She kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce. Months of suppressed want, finally breaking free. Ash met her intensity, one hand tangling in her blue hair, the other pulling her closer. She made a sound low in her throat, half surrender and half claiming. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she stayed close, forehead resting against his. "That was," she started. "Yeah, very unprofessional. Extremely." She smiled. "We need to disappear before Vulkar figures out we're in one of his shuttles. I'm routing us through the Kepler asteroids. You're learning to think like a human. Or you're learning to think like a Valkyrie." She kissed him again, softer. "Either way, we make an effective team." Ash pulled up their distress beacon and activated it. "Rescue should pick us up in about 6 hours. Sarah settled beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "6 hours," she repeated. "Whatever shall we do with the time?" The way she looked at him left no doubt. Ash grinned. "I have a few ideas." Her ears perked forward, and her hand found his. "Show me." The stolen shuttle drifted through the Kepler asteroids, engines running cold. Ash had pulled Saris into his lap in the pilot's chair, her legs straddling his hips as they explored each other with an urgency that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with finally surrendering to what had been building for months. Her hands were in his hair, her mouth on his neck. Every time her hips shifted against him, he had to fight to maintain control. Her blue hair spilled around them like a curtain, and when she pulled back to look at him, her eyes were dark with want. "I have spent 6 months trying not to think about this," she said, her voice rough. "About you. How'd that work out?" "Terribly." She kissed him again, slower this time, deliberate. "Especially after I saw you changing. I told myself it was just curiosity. And now? Now I know I was lying to myself." Her fingers traced the bruising along his ribs. "You're injured. We should stop. We really shouldn't." She laughed, and the sound was so unexpected that Ash felt something shift in his chest. Her ears were forward, relaxed in a way he'd never seen them. The distress beacon chimed. Saris tensed, then reluctantly slid off his lap to check the display. Response signal. "A salvage vessel, the Meridian. They're 3 hours out." 3 hours, Ash said. "That's not 6. She turned back to him, expression shifting. The heat was still there, but tempered with uncertainty. "When rescue arrives, what happens to us?" It was the question Ash had been avoiding. In the real world, he was a freelance salvager, and she was a Valkyrie observer assigned to ensure humans followed regulations. "What do you want to happen?" she asked. Sarah sat in the co-pilot seat, close enough that their knees touched. "The Valkyrie Consortium will expect a report. They'll ask why the Ascendant was destroyed." She paused. "They'll also ask about my assessment of human salvage operations. And I'm supposed to recommend stricter oversight. More regulations." She met his eyes. "That's what I was going to recommend. Before I learned that human impulsiveness is adaptability, that emotion isn't weakness, it's what drives you to make impossible choices and survive them. You're putting your career on the line. For us." She took his hand. "And for the truth. You showed me that desire, passion, connection, love can make us better instead of worse." "Love?" Ash asked quietly. Her ears flattened slightly. "I don't know what else to call what I feel when I look at you. The willingness to sacrifice everything for another person, to trust them with your life." Ash pulled her back to him, cradling her face. That sounds like love. To me. Is it mutual? I've been falling for you since you first yelled at me for taking that shortcut through the Theta Nebula. She kissed him then, tender. A promise instead of a claiming. When they broke apart, Saris rested her forehead against his. I'll have to return to the Vulkari homeworld to submit my report. It could take months. I'll wait. You hate waiting. For you? I'll earn. She smiled. Or you could come with me. The consortium would want to interview you anyway, and I'd like you to meet my family. The proximity alarm chimed. Ash checked the display. We've got company. One ship, hanging back at sensor range. Saris pulled up the tactical display. Vulkar signature. He tracked this shuttle. Can we outrun him? Not in this. And if we try, he'll follow us to the Meridian. Ash's mind raced. We make him think we're not worth the trouble. He pulled up the shuttle systems. This shuttle has an emergency beacon that activates if the ship is damaged, right? Yes, but Vulkar knows other ships would respond. He won't risk sticking around if he thinks help is coming. Saris's eyes widened. You want to damage our own shuttle. Just enough to trigger the beacon. We vent atmosphere from the port side, blow a few non-critical circuits, make it look like we took damage from the Ascendant's explosion. If we're wrong, if Vulkar boards us, then we fight. But he's a businessman. There's no profit in risking his ship against potential reinforcements. They worked together, systematically damaging the shuttle in ways that looked catastrophic but left core systems intact. Warning klaxons blared. Emergency lights flooded everything in red. The distress beacon activated. Through the V-port, they watched Vulkar's ship drift closer. A predator sizing up wounded prey. Ash pulled Saris close, his hand on a sidearm. The mercenary ship held position for 3 long minutes. Then it turned and accelerated away, disappearing into the asteroid field. Saris let out a breath. He left. Told you it would work. She turned in his arms, smiling despite the emergency lighting and blaring alarms. We make a good team, the best. The Meridian arrived 2.5 hours later. They transferred aboard, and Ash watched the stolen shuttle drift away. In the Meridian's small passenger cabin, Saris sat beside him, her hand in his. What now? Ash asked. Now we go home, give our reports, face whatever comes next. She looked at him. Together, if you're willing. I'm willing. Even if it means dealing with Vulkari bureaucracy? I've faced killer robots, mercenary fleets, and exploding starships. I think I can handle some bureaucrats. She laughed and kissed him. You have no idea what you're agreeing to. Probably not, but I'm adaptable, remember? I did. She settled against his shoulder. We should rest. It's a 3-day journey to the nearest station. 3 days, Ash repeated. That's a lot of time. It is. Her hand traced patterns on his chest. Whatever shall we do with it? Her tone made it clear she had ideas. Ash grinned and pulled her closer. I'm sure we'll think of something. Outside the V-port, stars streamed past as the Meridian carried them toward whatever future they'd claimed. The Ascendant was gone, destroyed to prevent its power from falling into the wrong hands. But what they'd found in its trials, trust, partnership, love, that was worth more than any salvage. Saris's breathing evened out, sleep cleaning her. Ash stayed awake a while longer, watching the stars. He closed his eyes and let himself drift, Saris warm and solid in his arms. And for the first time in years, Ash Donovan felt like he'd found something worth more than freedom. He'd found home.